Hi, this is Catherine Schneider from the Fitchburg Historical Society, and this afternoon we are in the Fitchburg Public Library, and we are in front of the mural of the Fitchburg Village. So a very appropriate place to do our interview today, because we are so happy to have Mike Couillard, who is the chair for the Fitchburg Landmarks Preservation Commission, who's here with us this afternoon. And so, Mike, we'd like to find out, first of all, maybe what brought you into being part of the Fitchburg Landmarks Preservation Commission, maybe what your interests were in that area?
Interesting question, Catherine, and that seems like many years ago now, but it was around 2006 I retired. And being retired, I thought, well, maybe I could volunteer, keep busy. So I knew the mayor at the time and told him I was interested in maybe sitting on a committee. And he said, oh, well, we have these vacancies. And he went through them and I said, well, none of those really sound too interesting. And then he got the landmarks, and he said, well, we need somebody on Landmarks Commission who has a real estate broker's license. And I said, oh, I have that. And I also have interest in history, and that my family's been in Wisconsin since 1850, and what's now the United States since 1720. So a lot of family history that's been documented, and I guess I'm the last generation of this generation who's keeping track of the family history. Plus, my wife worked at the State Historical Society for many years. So it was a nice tie-in, and I've enjoyed my time on the commission. And I guess as I look to the future, we've had a real good group of people, and we now have a new liaison in the planning department. And they might have to be looking for somebody else with a broker's license, because I have retired from that. So I no longer have an active broker's license. But that's what got me basically into this. And once I found out the people who were on it and the things we were doing, it just opened my eyes to the fact we had historic properties in Fitchburg, and that we needed to do something to maintain them and keep them active.
Great, great. Well, I'd say Fitchburg was very lucky that you asked that question when you retired, of where you could serve, and that your interests were very well matched to what was available with the Landmarks Preservation Commission. Well, so then that brings me to the question of what is the work of the commission, and maybe more broadly the purpose of historical preservation.
We have two basic purposes. One, Fitchburg has ordinances, Chapter 29, which gives us our guidance as to what we should be doing and what we're trying to do. And those ordinances ask us to identify and help maintain, through state programs and national programs, the historic properties in the city. So what we have done is we have put together, not me personally, but other associates and it's worked for the city in the past, a nice guide on the historic properties of Fitchburg. In 2016, working with the Landmarks Commission, we took the basis of those and put them together in this book, Historic Properties of Fitchburg. It's the first time we've had a nice edition, a hardcover copy. And part of the reason we did this is in the back of this is the guidance for all the property owners. So they know what the rules and requirements are for being on the historic register or having a historic property, and what they need to do to maintain it and not get out of compliance. Why do they care? Because if they do things to the home, they can get historic credits, tax credits, for those improvements and maintaining the condition of the home. And so it's important that we let them know what those are, those programs are available, and then make sure that they follow the guidelines so that they don't do something that's inappropriate, and then we have to go and knock on their door and say, we're very sorry, but what you just did is disturbs the outside structure and appearance of your home, and you shouldn't have done that without our approval. And that's the other thing we do. Is great example is Quibby's Grove, which uses their historic property in a commercial venture, wants to make changes or improvements. They have to come to the commission. We work with the owners, make sure that the changes they're proposing fit and match the historic nature of the property.
So this gives the guidelines then very available.
They're very available so that the property owners can find them without having to look through websites or other information that the city might have or contact somebody, because there's no full-time person at the city who works with the historic properties. So that way we felt we'd have a good resource for them, and it's available here in the library. So anybody else who wants to see it, any of the general public, it's available and can be easily brought off the shelf and used for research or whatever else they'd like to do with the book.
Great. Well, thank you for making us aware of that, Mike. And then the Landmarks Preservation Commission hired Tracy Schnell, historical consultant, to do a survey of the properties of historical significance in the city of Fitchburg. Could you tell us maybe some of the reasons that the survey was commissioned, and then what information is available in that survey?
Okay.
And I see you have a copy.
I brought my copy. The commission, in its ultimate wisdom, trying to look to the future. And there had never been an inventory, I say never, it means absolutely never, in the history of the city on any potential historic properties other than the ones we'd already identified. So working through the State Historical Society, we were able to get a grant so that the research that was done to identify potential historic properties in the city was done in conjunction with the Landmarks Commission, but also with the help and expertise of the State Historical Society staff to make sure it was done properly, and that all the staff requirements that we had to follow were clearly laid out, and all the things that the expert who we then put out our bid for proposals would have to follow to give us our guidance. And this is the report that we received. Unfortunately, we received the report just before COVID hit. And so, as nice as the report was, we sort of put it on the shelf until last October. We now have new planning staff in the city of Fitchburg, and so we had an informational meeting just to get together and talk about what we're going to do with this guide as far as the inventory and what we found as the inventory was completed. What we found is there are several properties in the city that potentially will qualify in the very near future. A property has to be at least 50 years old to be considered for any of the historic programs. And even though we don't think of Fitchburg as an old community, there are many older properties in the city, several, I won't say many, several older properties in the city that are approaching that age where they have significant architectural style or have some unique characteristic that would potentially qualify them to be a part of our historic property base.
Wonderful. And so this report is really coming to the fore now more, with COVID having caused some interruption in maybe the process of getting this out and available to people and being able to be useful in the community.
What our next step is we are sending letters to the several properties that we've identified. And the property owners, it's a voluntary program. We don't require them, we ask them, and we show them, tell them about the credits and the ability they have to join the program if they're interested. So we're preparing letters to those property owners to let them know that this program is available to them, and if they are interested, we will do more follow-up with them and share all those guidelines and details with them so they can make the decision if it's appropriate for their property or not.
Wonderful. Well, that brings me to ask, are there things that citizens can do to be involved in landmarks preservation? Any things you would suggest?
What I would like, if we have them, if the citizens have them, and I know many do, is old photos of Fitchburg. It's one of those things, I didn't find this out until I tried to gather old photos from my family, that many of those photos were taken and put away and forgotten about. And if there are older photos of the city properties that are now in the city from when we were a township, if we could get some of those brought to the forefront again, that would be really great, so that we could have some today and before, current and earlier pictures of those properties, so that we would have a basis so that we could look at them and see possibly could they be hidden characteristics that we can't see that were there originally that had been covered up over years of remodeling and changes. So that would be very helpful. The other thing would be just to support the Landmarks Commission. We haven't really done a lot of outreach, but we're proposing putting up signage so that people have a better awareness of the historic properties in Fitchburg. And that's something we've been looking at for a number of years, but again with COVID, things were pushed back a little bit. Just like to share one comment, in that we have a very good base of individuals working with me on the Landmarks Commission. Bill Kinney has been a member for many years. Eric Udis is an architect who works for Dane County, who's been an integral part in helping us in looking at style and information on specific building types, that, especially when we look through the inventory. Amy Steger has been our newest member, our younger member. And we're very glad to have her. She's brought a real good communication background with us, and she helps immensely in helping us do our communications that we want to put out. And one of the latest members is Michael Stevens, who retired from the State Historical Society and has brought a wealth of knowledge and background that we can then draw upon as we look at things that we want to do in Fitchburg, and use his expertise to help us gain that experience that we need, working off of his experience. And then lastly, the president of the Fitchburg Historical Society. Alan is also a member of our board. And all these people have different backgrounds, and they bring great contributions to the committee so that we can make good informed decisions and try to do things that are going to help preserve the properties we have in Fitchburg.
Sounds like you have an excellent list of people who have been involved with the Landmarks Preservation
I've enjoyed
Commission.
working with them immensely. That's why I've been on the committee so long, because they're a great group.
It makes a difference, doesn't it, who you work with? Well, then I'd like to ask Mike if there are national, state, local organizations that you can plug into to help with what you do. Is there any collaborative efforts going on in that direction?
Absolutely. You heard me talk about the State Historical Society. They're our conduit. We work first through them. Their position is they're the statewide organization that gathers the data. That's why when we did the inventory, we worked through the contact there. His name was Joe DeRose, was recently retired. But he was here multiple times talking to us and guiding us on this process, helping us select a vendor that would do a good job for us. Once we had this information, it goes to the State Historical Society. They keep the inventory of it so that we don't have to worry about it being lost. Unfortunately, they don't update it on a regular basis as Fitchburg is growing and changing, which is something we may have to look at in the future. But it was all done through grants through the State Historical Society, so this cost us nothing, which was one of the benefits that, you know, we don't have a big budget in the Landmarks Commission, so we wanted to make sure we could do it and not put a button, draw on the city budget and put a request in that was going to be so what people would consider unreasonable. So by doing it and having the grants, the Historical Society then works through, believe it or not, the National Park. So that's their link then to the National Historic Register. It's administered through our National Park system, and we then have that direct link through that process by working with the State Historical Society.
Wonderful connections to help strengthen your resources, both financially and in terms of information and being able to save what you have found also in your survey.
The staff at the State Historical Society was upfront on every step of this process to give us the guidance we needed so we could do it successfully.
Wonderful.
It was.
Wonderful. And so what are the future priorities of the Fitchburg Landmarks Preservation Commission?
You drive around Fitchburg, it's changing rapidly. We, myself specifically, and we've talked about this as a commission, have two goals. First goal is to get the signage out so more people know about the historic properties in the city. Eric brought some very good examples to us of things that Dane County has been doing when they have historic properties and types of signage that they're using. We're looking into that to see if we can adapt that to use it on our bike trails and other places where the historic properties could be identified without being obtrusive to the property owner. We don't want people knocking on their door saying, I understand you have a historic property, can I come see it? We certainly have to respect the fact these are private properties. People own them and live in them. And my main goal now, and something that I think is critical, is we are losing barns in Fitchburg on an accelerated pace. They're not being used in the dairy industry any longer. They're falling into a state of disrepair, and many of them are disappearing. I would like to have us document and keep a record of the barns of Fitchburg before they're historically gone. And that's something which we need to put on the burner to get going. We do have some basis of comparison from the city assessment records, but that's just a snapshot. They don't focus on the barns. So I'd like to make sure we keep that history of Fitchburg before it's gone. So that's one of our next goals, is to identify, document the history of the farming community in Fitchburg and the barns specifically.
Sound like a very, very worthy goal, and very timely to get that done before it does disappear, that part of rural Fitchburg. Well, is there anything else you'd like to say about historical preservation and within the city of Fitchburg, Mike?
Just one brief comment, and that we rely heavily on the city staff and the planning department, and they have been excellent in helping us and guiding us so that we make sure if we do need some money for a project, that we can make sure that it's done properly going through the city channels. We do have new staff in those positions. So last October we met just informally so that we could meet each other, sort of find out what their backgrounds are, and they could see what we want to do so that we have a basis of moving forward. And without their support and assistance, which has been excellent, we would not be at the point we are today. And I think that we need to continue that support and grow it so that we can make sure that things we want to get done happen. So again, just a thank you to those individuals. There's quite a few. I don't want to try to name names because I probably missed somebody, but they have been an integral part in helping us in this process so that we make sure we follow the right steps when it comes to following the ordinances in the city.
Wonderful. It's so good to hear about the value that city officials, as well as the Fitchburg Historical Landmarks Commission, place on our sites and what they mean to us in preserving them and understanding what they have meant to us as a city. Well, thank you, Mike, so much for just filling us in on all that the Fitchburg Landmarks Preservation Commission has been doing and continues to do and is looking into the future. So thank you so much.
Catherine, I understand that there's an opportunity for people to find out a lot more about the inventory that was completed.
There is.
And not just from me, but from the person who actually did it.
Yes.
Would you share a little bit about that so
I would
that doesn't
love
get
to.
lost?
Thank you so much. So the Fitchburg Historical Society is going to have their spring meeting, which is coming up Sunday, April 23rd, 1:30 in the afternoon here at the Fitchburg Public Library. And we want to invite the public. And it will be featuring Tracy Schnell, who was the consultant who produced the survey that Mike has. So she will be able to present the results of the survey and the historical sites that she has featured here that will be presented at that meeting. So I think it'll be a very interesting meeting for the public, and we hope that many people will come to attend. So it will be here at the Fitchburg Public Library. So again, Sunday, April 23rd, 1:30 in the afternoon. So we hope to have lots of people interested in our historical sites here in the city of Fitchburg. So thank you very much, Mike.
My pleasure. Thank you.